Um, and then let me give you sort of like a tour of the files and everything we have here. Let's wait till everyone has fork and clone. Make sure you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Brianna.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, you want that?
Nah, I'm not giving a speech. Thank you, guys. Did you guys fill out those evaluations or surveys for?
There's one here.
Whose is this one?
What's wrong with this?
Come on now, y'all. Give some information so that I can share with the staff. Just so you know, I usually take what you guys say without your names and I share them with the volunteers. So what I usually do is I look at what you say for what was the most impactful or one thing that you learned, and I share that with them. So like your comments do make an impact on whether those volunteers will come back.
Yes, not everyone has fork. Why? Fork and clone, yeah.
So once you Amazon Go,
You got an Amazon Go?
no, I went to they've got a right where I work, and it's free. You have to get an app. You have to get the Amazon Go app, and you have to have a Prime account. You scan it at a turn zone, let you in, and then you shop. So you just take things off and put them in the bag or something, and then walk right out.
That's the app. That's the store in Manhattan where you can.
Yeah, to like Lexington and like 42nd Street.
Wait, but is this one of the specialized stores, or there was a store that you frequent that just changed?
No, it's brand new.
Okay.
It's
Yeah. That is with face recognition, they can
I
charge
was gonna say
you.
like it's gotta be because it's like even the guy in the store is like, it's not reading from your phone. Your phone could die while you're in here. It's not taking any of your information. So I'm like, so to do it, it must like get my ID from the scan, attribute it to my face as I'm coming in.
Yeah.
Watch every instance while I'm in the store.
Yeah. But I don't know, because like as Ben was saying, that information stays forever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a new experience going on.
You feel like you're still in when you're walking out without paying
A little
directly.
bit, but more it was just I was trying to wrap my brain around how it must be done, but it must be cameras everywhere.
Yeah, I think.
Account of every action you do and how long you look. It even sends you on with your receipt, like how long you were in the store, down to the seconds.
Tracking everything.
Yeah.
Cool. So everyone, Fork and Clone have 19. Okay, that's closer to what we expect. So let me give you a tour of this app so that nothing surprises us. So as you clone, you are in a folder that has the following content. So we have our app.js, sometimes called server.js or index.js. That's like the main entry point. That's where we do the main work. Then we have DB. In DB we have our SQL file. Just to the name of this database, I call it just to do it. And that's our SQL file. And index.js here is where we import PG promise. And then helpers is something else that for some helper functions. This this is a function that then we use as middleware to see if a body data that is coming in is missing one of the properties that we were expecting. We don't really have to worry about this. And then this gen ID is a function that will generate an ID for our to-dos. But we don't have to. We're not gonna get into this too much because there is no problem with these files. Yeah, so that's DB. In models, let me actually give this on VS Code. Let's put let me close all this so we start from scratch. So this is what our app looks like. The DB folder has these three, our SQL file, creating a database and some users. Then the index.js, what index.js is doing is just importing PG promise and exporting it right here. Don't worry too much about what these other are. Just know that in this file we import PG promise and then we will use PG promise once imported to add stuff and remove stuff from the database. But let's see how we use the PG promise. So PG promise we actually use in the folder called models. There are three files: users.js, todos.js, and tags.js. In here, let's look at users. So users is importing the DB and errors from the DB index.js. So this is just importing the DB object and errors. Oh, also, we're gonna get into these later on. This thing here, known as, let me just remove this. Once we get into React, we can explain how that works. Errors. So this line here at the top is the same as these two lines. So you can leave it like that. You don't need to change it. Just sort of know that this one line at the top is the same as these two lines separated here. What this is doing is just importing the DB object from this file, right? Which is a property of that module.exports and the errors object. But here we can see, more importantly, we see some functions for creating a user, an insert into query, etc. We can see here that there's some check for whether if the username is already taken. Then there is another function, get user by username. You can imagine what that is doing is db.1 select star from users where username matches the username, etc. Then get user by ID, award points. I think we're not using actually this one. Get all, this gets all the user select star from users, and so on for the to-dos. So there is like a function in here in models, inside of the models folder, the to-dos JS are basically all the functions that have anything to do with inserting or modifying to-dos in the database. Right? Get all to-dos, get to-do, create to-do, update to-do, etc. Questions here so far. So we have the DB folder that imports pgpromise and the models folder that has the functions separated by file, by sort of domain to interact with the objects in the database. Questions up until this point? Yes?
Models is pulling in from database.
That's correct. Yes, if we go here at the top, we see this line. Initially I had this. You could leave this one, just know that this line is doing the same work as these two lines, importing two things. So yes, this will pull from the database. Other questions? Yes, I mean.
You said without worrying about the helper and the error, right?
Yeah, so we're not gonna need to touch those. Yeah. Yes.
Why use it right?
Regex. Where am I using regex? Oh, this. This is not regex. This is. So do you remember about the SQL injection problem, right? That we shouldn't really put unsanitized input in our SQL because they can remove the database and do anything they want. What this is doing is, so let's explain this a little bit. So you have been probably doing something like this. Let's modify this query. So let me comment this. So you probably have been doing this. Values, and then here you put a 1, right? And this, some of you discovered this returning. We can talk about it after. So what you probably have is something like this. Insert into users, the column that you want to insert, and then values 1. And then that values you will probably put in here, like user. Right, something like this, where you put in here actually the username, let's say Alejo4373. So some of you read the documentation of pgpromise, which is great, but in the documentation of pgpromise, it says that there's a few ways to pass arguments to your SQL queries. One of the most useful ways is with object properties. So we can see here query formatting. So here, so we are used to this, and this is, if you do like this in the exam, the assessment, that's fine. That's totally fine. This works, right? Where you put in 1 and 2, and then those will be the elements in this array, right? But it's better if you do it with a name, with name parameters. So what this is doing is, as we can see here, we could specify name parameters with any of these. I prefer the backslashes because all the others have like a special meaning in JavaScript, or not a special meaning, but these are very commonly used, curly brackets, parentheses, but slashes are not as used. So I prefer that one, but you could use any of those. And let's look at this query here. So this is insert into user's first name, last name, and age. And then the values are this in curly brackets or with slashes. What this is doing is going to grab the age property of the second argument. So the age property of the second argument, if we look at here, this is the second argument, an object that starts here and ends here. So in this fashion, we could pass an object as a second argument to the DB call, and then reference the properties here with this syntax. So what this is going to do is it's going to check for the age property in the object, in the second argument object. That's it. Yes?
We use backticks as the first notation we're gonna.
Yeah, if you use backticks instead here, if you use backticks instead of single or double quotes, then you cannot really use the curly bracket, because the curly bracket is reserved for inside the curly bracket, or this expression. $sign curly bracket is sort of reserved inside of backticks. Yeah. So that's another reason why I really like backticks, because I can break my SQL into multiple lines, but then I cannot really do this. Even though this is valid for PG promise, it's also JavaScript will interpret it, and that's not what I want. So I go with the one that is not as common. Yes.
So you need the common thing, the slash, to make it any kind of word, right? So it doesn't have to be $1, $2.
Right. Yes, that's correct. So that I can inside my SQL query, I can reference a key in the second argument object. That's the whole point.
The second argument has to be an object. It can't be an array.
That's correct. The second argument has to be an object. It cannot be an array. If you're doing an array as a second argument, you just do index variables like this. Why do you think this one is slightly better?
More specific?
More easier to understand. Here I can, if I'm looking at this, I don't know what 1 and 2 mean. I have to look here. And in here, even though it's like 1 and 10, I don't know what that means. Right? But in here, age, you know what that means. Right? So it's a little bit more explicit. Cool. So that's that. And then the returning that I had here, this is Postgres specific. Let's do an example here. Let's go into pSQL, PSQL. Maybe, I think I have a database here. Let's connect to, just do it. Let's see the tables. So we have these tables, to-dos and users, right? If you do insert into, just like this, and close, you see that insert doesn't give you anything back, right? Insert just inserts and you don't get anything back. Compared to a select, when you do a select, you get the result back. So what returning allows you to do is it returns what you inserted, which can be really handy sometimes. For instance, when you insert or when you delete something, you sometimes want the stuff that you deleted, right? I know that some of you find out about returning on your own, which is great. But let's try this. So returning star. You see, it's sort of like, you could think of returning sort of like a select immediately after the insert. That sort of happens automatically. We insert it here, and then this returning star is return star, just like in select star, return all the columns of that table. So this can come in quite handy. Questions about this?
Is it returning everything that's in the table?
Just what I inserted. That's a good question, yes. So like an update, updates also don't return anything. But when you do returning star, it will return back to you what was just updated. Yeah?
So I'm looking at the code in user.js, and the function create user, it says insert into username, but it's username.
Let's look at that. This one, create user. So going back to this, so this is what we had.
Oh, it's a column username.
So here is like what is user, right? So this is something like this. So remember that the second argument This is the same as doing this. Here.
Okay.
Oh, I removed that return. Oops. So note that in here, what pgpromise is going to do is going to look for a username key in the second argument. Remember, this is the second argument, this object. It's going to look for a username key in this object. Once it finds that username key, then it's going to plug its value in here. And that's it. So this user here that you receive here, this user is an object that has a username property. If you look at the rounds query, then you'll see the object there. Yes?
Do you do multiple inserts? Do you get multiple inserts?
For the returning,
Or just only one?
that's a good question. I'm not sure. Well, we could try it here right now. Insert into values blah. Returns now. Oops. No, I had to specify another values, right? Do I have to specify just like that? Yes. So if you insert more than one thing, returning everything will not only return, returning star not only returns all the columns, but also all the rows that were inserted. But we're gonna be mostly inserting one thing. And how do you get past this? Or I guess for whenever in your apps, whenever you inserted a comment or whenever you inserted a post, how would you returning that post immediately back once the insert happened? How? Yes.
One option was to do another query.
So you were doing another query like select star from whatever the newly inserted. Okay, that's totally valid. Maybe some of you were like receiving the object from the front end, then inserting it, and then returning back the object that you just got from the front end, right? The problem with that approach is that you won't get the ID, for instance, or you won't get any of the defaults that might be added once you insert something to the database. Yeah. Cool. So let's look at here. So create users. So basically, all the stuff that is this is separated basically by domain. The users queries are in the users model, JS file, etc. And then those we connect to a router. So we have like 4 routers. Index, which says just a GET request. That's not really interesting. Doesn't have anything. We're not going to touch it. Tags to do. So let's look at to do's for instance. So to do's here. So all the regular stuff, we are importing the to do's from the models, which remember that are all the database queries for related to to-dos. And then we see here that if we receive a GET request to /to-dos, we're gonna get all the to-dos, right? Remember that this to-dos is that object, we're just getting all of them. This one is receiving some query parameters. If you don't pass any query parameters, it will work just fine. But here is nothing different from what you were having before. Just like you were just probably calling the entire function here. Here we just separated it a little bit, where all the database operations are inside of all the models. Yes. Douglas, you had a question?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. So this gets all the to-dos, you receive all the to-dos here, and you respond with this. An object with 2 properties, payload and to-dos. So let me show you for instance, in Postman, let me close all this stuff. So let's try to add a to-do here. Let's make sure my server is running. npm. Oh, so we have been running. Let's just do it like this. Nodemon app.js. That starts Nodemon, and then we can try to insert something to our database. This server address that I have here is just sort of like a global variable that you can set up on Postman, and this is just equal to localhost 3000. You can find it in here if you're interested in you can set up an environment here, and in here, if I look at the value of the variable server address, it's just http://localhost 3000. So don't worry about that. So let's try to create a post in here. Let's body, first to do, and then username Alejo4373. When we send that, we should get back a response. So we see that the to do was completed, was added. We receive an ID, the owner, the to do, and by default, the state of a to do is completed false. Right? Questions around this?
What model do we need to start?
So that's a good question. Everything is in your package JSON. So this is the idea of this review is also sort of where you are called into a team project that there is something already there. You have to read what's already there, try to make sense of it, and then start collaborating. Yeah. So the packages that you need to install is non-technically, because if we look at here the package JSON, this already has a package JSON, and then here we have the dependencies. So for installing the dependencies in this package JSON, the only thing that you need to do is npm install in that project. When you do npm install, this will download all the dependencies that are listed on your package JSON. A question here, Michael.
When you did the call, in the routes you put right that query?
Yeah. Wait. No, not in the post. I think the post.
Yeah, okay.
Not in the post.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, other questions? Yes.
Where's the ID coming from? Is it the ID generated?
Do you remember that file that I said that we don't really need to worry about? DB helpers. This function, genID, it generates an ID. Mm-hmm. And if you see, if you look at the user's route, you can see that, not users, to-dos. When we do create new to-do, post here, post new to-do, we have here the ID that we call helpers gen ID. This will create that ID. Mm-hmm. This thing here that might be confusing, that we have 3 dots before, is sort of similar to what we saw earlier. But this, what it's doing is copying everything that is in the request.body and put it into this object, into the new to-do object. So in other words, another way to do this is this. This is what, again, sort of that syntactical sugar. So we know that a need to do needs a username or an owner, I think we call it. So this is rec.body, that owner. What is the other thing? Text, I think. If we look at Postman, these are the only 2 things that we need to create to do an owner and a text. So you do text, rec.body.text. So this here, what I commented out here is the same as this one, saying copy. This is saying copy everything that is in request.body onto the new to-do object. It's just that, again, syntactical sugar where developers see that we're doing something repeated ourselves and they create something to avoid that. In this case, they created those 3 dots to do that. Yeah.
Does it work only for objects or for?
It works for arrays as well. Yeah, anything object-like. That is this thing is known as the spread operator because it spreads the properties. Yeah. We're gonna see more details of that in the next unit. Yeah.
You're generating the ID with JavaScript, not with the database.
That's correct. The ID for the to-dos is being generated with JavaScript with this function genID, and not in the database. Yes, the IDs for the users are being generated in the database.
That has a meaning, like a sense, or it's just like a decision?
This ID.
That you're not generating in the database and generating in JavaScript is for a reason, or it's just like.
Is it possible you get the same ID?
I think yes, it is possible, but it's extremely difficult. At least because I'm not using the full ID, I'm using just one section. The ID that this function will generate is much more larger. But I remember there was a reason, but I don't remember exactly why I picked this. I think it was because I didn't want you to get used to the IDs being increasing in order. I wanted to show you some other kinds of IDs. Yeah. Cool. Other questions? So the first thing that we're gonna do is take some time to, it's for you to explore the project. Let's look, for instance, at app.js. This shouldn't really be surprising. We import all the known stuff. We import our routers here. Then we declare an app. We declare a port. We set up some middleware, some global middleware cores, the JSON body parser that comes from Express, URL encoded. Then we sort of set up our routers to listen for these endpoints. The main endpoint index router that just returns like a welcome message. Then we have /users that requests that arrive here are going to be routed to users router. Requests that arrive to /todos will be routed to the todos router, and so on. And then here, this might be new, but nothing too complicated. Here is, these are other middleware that says basically if a request came to an endpoint that is none in this list, the list that I have selected, then just fall over here. So this is how you can catch 404 errors. Anything that was not handled in here will automatically be a 404 error. And that is what these functions are doing. Yeah, this is what it says, nothing found here, the endpoint or method is unhandled by the server. And then this one is sort of like a debugging function where if our server crashes, we're gonna see why it crashed, right? You probably, once you deploy an application, this function are probably inside an if statement that says, if the application is running in production, then don't show any errors. If it's running in development or in testing, then let's show the errors because it's probably developers that want to look to what happened. But all the changes and all the exercises that you need to do are going to be in the models, changing some stuff in the models. Changing some stuff here, adding, modifying the SQL file because you're going to need to add some tables. Fixing some stuff in the to-dos and the users. Database queries, and implementing, for instance, implementing the tagged route that is currently not implemented. and so on. So let me go back to the project. And so I think the idea is, let me show you here. So this is the project that you clone. We sort of have some documentation for the stuff that's in there, all this. And then these are the exercises that we're gonna practice as review. So registering a user with an already taken username is possible when it shouldn't be, right? So we have to fix that. There are a few ways. Here I gave you a hint. This is one way in which you can do it, thinking of database constraints. So what you need to do is look at why is it that is being added. Username, basically we're allowing duplicate usernames when we shouldn't, and think about how to fix that. Then there are some others like that. Adding a to-do with a username that doesn't exist should not be allowed. This is similar because every to-do needs an owner, right? Adding a to-do with an owner that is not in the users table already shouldn't be allowed, right? So we have to think about that. And so on. So this is like some fixing stuff. And then we're gonna add a little bit. So we're gonna add some endpoints to the to-dos router and the tags router. So what this is about is that, let's say we want to create a to-do, but we want to tag that to-do because maybe we want to get all the elements, all the to-dos that are of a certain tag. Like let's say I have a tag called grocery shopping, and I'm gonna be creating to-dos. Let's say like my shopping list. I'm gonna create to-dos for buy milk, buy broccoli, whatever, and then I'm gonna tag those to-do with the tag grocery shopping, right? Then there are some other to-dos like clean room, like wash the bathroom. Those are gonna be tagged as chores. Or this is sort of like an example, but you get the idea of like allowing tags. This is something that like GitHub allows you to do. We don't have anything here, but for instance, these are tags. You see these things here? These are tags that the creator of pgpromise tagged this library with, because this is PostgreSQL interface. It works with Node. It handles promises. It's written in JavaScript. Allows transactions, etc. So sort of the similar idea, but with to-dos. Questions about that? Say that again? Oh, thank you. Hopefully I'm going to finish by then. Oh, I don't know why this table didn't come up correctly. But so for implementing that, we're going to add two endpoints to to-dos. So we're going to add this endpoint to post a to-do, or to tag or assign a tag to a to-do, which is to-do/to-do ID tag/tag ID. So let's say I have a to-do buy milk with an ID. Let's say the ID is 31, just as an example. And I want to tag this, and let's also say that I have a tag with ID maybe ID 2, that is like grocery shopping. So if I want to tag this to-do with that tag, what we do is we say /to-dos / the to-do ID, which is 31, /tag singular here /2. What this will do is it's going to tag to-do with ID 31 with tag 2. So that's that, and then to get all the to-dos by a specific tag, so sort of to say I want all my grocery shopping to-dos, or I want all my chores to-dos, then you will implement this endpoint slash to-dos slash tags, plural here, then the tag ID. So to get like all my grocery shopping to-dos, I'll do to-dos slash tags slash to. Right. That will get all the to-dos in that category, or that are tagged in that way. So obviously for doing that, first we will need to create tags, right? We need to be able to create tags, modify tags, and delete tags. So for that, you're going to create the tags table. You're going to create a tags table. You're going to create the tags router, and that will let you so that we can do this stuff. So we can get all the tags, create a new tag, update a tag, delete a tag. I don't know why the table. Let me see if I can fix that table now. Maybe because I didn't leave any space. So let's see if that fixed the table. Nice, yeah. So for this, then there is some description here. So sort of what we need to do. Made the edit to add 2 tables to the database. We're going to need 2 tables, one tags and another table to-do tags to store the relationship. So the tags table will just store tags. Let's say in this case, tags will have an ID, an owner, and a name. Why do you think I put this owner here in the tags? Yes, but like, why would we want to associate a tag with an owner?
So you know who's using it.
So you know who's using it, and also because like you probably want your tags to be private, right? Or unless you want to share them with the entire world so that other people can use your tags. No, because we allow multiple users creation here.
So like each user can see everyone else's.
At the moment, everyone can see. Yes, a user can see everyone else's to-dos. Yeah. That could be a bonus I could add. Prevent that from happening, but like once we cover the basics. So tags belong to an owner, and they have a name. Let's say like grocery shopping, right? Then we will need a to-dos underscore tags table to connect tags to to-dos, right? To be able to say this to-do belongs to this tag, right? This is what is known as a join table. Some of you had to do these tables for your project, right? And then it will look just like that. To-do ID associated with a tag ID. We can see, for instance, that to-do 1 and to-do 5, they both are tagged with tag ID 2. That means that if tag ID 2 is grocery shopping, then to-do 5 and 1 must be grocery shopping related, right? This is necessary because a to-do can have multiple tags and a tag can have multiple to-dos. So then our job will be to implement the router for tags. Well, it says that it's in place, but currently doesn't handle any requests. So we basically want to implement these routes, post tags, get tags, patch, delete, and then we're going to need to modify the to-dos router to handle assigning a tag to a to-do, as well as getting all the to-dos by a tag ID. So, questions? So I think, yes.
Is this going to be the structure of the assessment tomorrow, where we're going to be given something and then we'll have to fix it, or we have to do something from scratch?
You'll have to do it from scratch, yes. This sort of one, it gives you sort of an idea as to how you could structure your files, but you don't have to follow this exact structure. Yeah. So cool. So the point is, hopefully, so let's take sort of like the first 15 minutes to explore the projects, maybe see the database with PSQL-F and then the SQL file. Then maybe with Postman make some network requests, get a sense of what is there. And then after that, we can start to move on to these tasks. So the goal is so that we could do this, as a class. Let's say once you get sort of accustomed with the project, or at least familiar with it, then we can, I can give you some times to think about this point. And then from the conversation, I could, demonstrate here what we will do to solve this, right? I'm sure some of you already have some ideas, but cool. So let's get started. So let's take 15 minutes to get used to the project. Make sure you install the dependencies, see the database, and maybe make some network requests to it. I could share. Oh yeah, like I can share this so that you can. Let me share this. I have a network request collection in Postman that I could just share with you, so that you don't have to write all these requests from scratch. So let me just export this, and then this exports as a JSON. Then you could just click on import. Let's export there. I'm gonna fix the. Let's see. Where did it go? Where did I put this? Pursuit. I guess. Everyone is taking a look at the battery right now. Where the heck? It's like Mac, Apple lies to you. They lie about the battery. Oh yeah. I have noticed that when I'm home, my battery, the battery of my phone, drains faster, and then when I'm away, it lasts like in 10% for like a long time. So I have my suspicion is that they're looking at your location, and if they see that you can have a charger soon, then it's gonna let you, it's gonna just drain it if you're not near one. So I'm gonna change in here. I'm just gonna change whatever it says server